Okay. This is the Environmental Management Commission meeting for September 27th, 2023. And welcome. We have people in the West Hawaii Civic Center in Kona, as well as on Zoom, which includes me using equipment I'm not familiar with. So I hopefully won't lose you all. To start off, why don't we do a roster? And I'll be squinting here somewhat. John Burns from District 1, I believe, is not with us. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Laura Ocasio from District 2, waving there, thank you. In Kona is Del Atsuka. Wave, Del. Yeah. From District 4 is John Olson. Thank you. Missing Melissa Cardwell, I believe, from District 5. Lee McIntosh is there from District 6. We are moving toward a representative from District 7. I think he's got next month for the official council approval, and that'll be Gonzalo Garcia. So looking forward to filling that hole that's been there for a while. District 8 is Dorothy Norris, who's in Kona. And this is Georgine Adams, and sitting in Maryland right now, District 9. So welcome, and let's move through our agenda to the next item, which is the minutes of our last meeting of August 22nd. Could I get a motion to adopt the minutes?
Motion to adopt the minutes.
I got Laura making it, and a second from anybody?
John.
Oh, Dot. We'll put Dot down as a second. Thank you. Any corrections, comments on the minutes? Seeing none. I'll say aye in favor of adopting the minutes. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, Kona.
Aye.
Anybody against adopting the minutes? No, they are so approved. Thank you very much. Statement from the chair is I'm going crazy. I'm out of town for almost 2 months and trying to keep everything on track. I thank our visitor speaker today, and I think we'll hear some interesting things as well from DEM, and look forward to the coming comments that we have. The next item is item 4, public statements on items on the agenda. I believe we have at least one commenter who would like to present now rather than at the time of the agenda item. But if there is anybody who'd like to wait until we get to the agenda item, we can so note, and Peter will remind me not to forget you. Nobody later? Okay, so for now, I understand as Richard Ha wanted to make a comment. Is that correct?
Yes.
And which item would you want to comment on?
Plastic disposal.
So our discussion on an ordinance to ban landfilling? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, so roughly half of the plastic disposed of in a landfill are single-use plastic. So I just have several questions. How will they be disposed of? how much will it cost taxpayers? And who will benefit? And I guess the last one is, what is the life cycle analysis for that? That's all.
Just a few questions. Okay. Try to address that when we get to that part of the discussion, which should
Sure.
be pretty soon.
Chair, we do have one more person requesting to make a
Another?
comment. Yep, Melinda Hughes.
Melinda,
Hello, can you hear me?
yes.
Perfect.
Which item do you wish to talk to?
I'm actually going to talk about the zero waste ordinance as well.
Okay.
So I think that the majority of us want to see a healthy planet in the future, and to get there, we need to reduce the current waste, also embrace new technology as they come to market. So I thank you for working towards this effort, and I think that the community as a whole needs to come together, whether you have a recycling background, whether you have community engagement, because it's going to take everybody. That said, I've been working in the environmental policy field for over 3 decades, globally and domestically. Since 2005, specific to climate change, 99 directly on solid waste. I actually worked for a county solid waste department in 1999. I also hold a master's in environmental law and policy with focuses on energy law and climate law. So while I see the draft ordinance as a good attempt, I also see some fatal flaws with it that, before it goes forward, probably should be fixed if you want it to get somewhere. First, it discriminates in who it targets, also lacks any plans for ultimate enforcement of any laws that do pass. I'd assume that by requiring reports from corporation, the goal is to have some transparency while also reducing waste at the source. But in taking out the county landfill piece of this, most likely you're going to lose that transparency that you hope to gain. Companies will have to make their own private deals instead of this piece being controlled at the county level. So end result, you lose the transparency and any of that county control over where your gas goes. And then I think the other big piece that gets lost sometimes is that we're on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So a lot of things have to be imported. So, when you think about things that have to be important, there's some things that aren't going to be able to be recycled into the products that are actually needed. So it's not quite feasible to really just reduce that at that source sometimes for those corporations. But with any new drafts, I hope to see some of these things addressed. And if anybody wants any help with that, feel free to contact me. But I don't think at this point the ordinance is smart to move forward until those are addressed. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. And again, we'll be talking hopefully in more detail and fill in some of those questions and comments that you have when we get there. Any other comments from the public? Okay, hearing none. Thank you for your input. Move to unfinished business, item 5.1, the good old pre-treatment rule draft and status report on that. Is that you, Ramsey, or is Chris on?
I would imagine, Chris, I don't know if he's signed up, but if he's not, as I guess him and I thought at one point, Georgianne, you need to jump in and help kind of draft that since we lack in staff. So I don't know where you at with coordinating with Chris.
I have not received anything from Chris.
Okay.
So I haven't started de novo on my own on that.
Definitely, I'd love to get your experience and expertise, if you don't mind, as you had offered in the past. But I'll check with Chris if he's not signed. And I know he's on the west side today, but I don't know if he's still driving or he got to the west side. So
Okay, well, if he shows up later, we can ask him. Given my crazy schedule, traveling schedule coming up, I'm not going to make big guarantees, but still happy to look out and offer comments as I can.
thank you.
Item two rather, is what we've talked about, and we had comments, and again, thank you, public commenters on that. What we have is a previous motion by the commission to draft some kind of letter to the council asking them to consider an ordinance that begins to ban the landfill of recyclables, things that we've got other ways to manage them, either through reuse or recycling and recovering the materials on island or off island, to keep them out of our landfill that is quickly filling up. And so what we have been working on for a couple of meetings now is the content of this letter to the council, which is basically the council has got to write an ordinance. EMC per se does not write and issue ordinances. We are an advisory body only. So what we'd be doing is to ask the council, would they be interested in picking it up? Excuse me. So I had offered last time a draft of that letter to go to council. We decided, it's in our reference for this meeting. We decided we would not refer to resolution 7323 from before. So I blanked that one out. And then the question that I think we were left with at the end of last meeting, oh, thanks, Peter, was whether we wanted to go into the detail that's on the second page of that letter, which were the things that I was using as guideposts for myself as I was drafting the possible ordinance language. So they were some of the, it's looking weird, Peter. I don't see the letter anymore. Does anybody else see? Oh, there it is. Okay. So the section that's grayed out there, Lee McIntosh made a comment suggestion last time. Well, don't go into all that stuff. Just make it simple and send a letter that says, hey, we think you guys should look at how we can keep recyclables out of the landfill. Many jurisdictions in the US basically ban the landfilling of different materials, such as green waste or the high five equivalent, the bottle bills that exist out there, that you don't send them to landfill, period. And so that was one concept that I thought we could move, and there seemed to be some backing for that from the commission. And all the details are what gets bogged down on everything. So what I was trying to do with the grayed out section is just lay out some of the guidelines that I had in coming up with what is in that draft ordinance. So the idea was not to load on a lot more responsibility, whether by enforcement or by providing a lot of additional services by the county itself. That was the first bullet. The second one was to do a split. So the council is setting up the basic target. We've got to slow down, eliminate the amount of volume going into a landfill, pick a number, 20%, 30%, 10% a year. And that would be set by the council. And then some general criteria that they would set, saying these are the kinds of materials that we would consider bannable, if you will, restricted from landfill. And basically the criteria to begin talking about would be, we've got some place for it to go to actually be recycled. It isn't just going to stack up in a warehouse for decades. So looking at, can it be recycled? Do we have a way to even collect it and get it to where it will be recycled? And then that it contributes to real significant reduction in the landfill volume. And then let DEM write the administrative rules that would be specific on who cannot send things to landfill and what they cannot send, and deal with that detail on a rule basis from the DEM that would be subject to public notice and comment. And would be a little bit easier to adjust as markets and technologies change over time. So I don't really want to go through each and every one of these bullets again, but option one, as I said, we could just take out that grayed out section entirely. And option two, if you slip down a little bit, Peter, was not to attach a draft at all. This draft was basically my brainstorm. Laura Casio had a little bit of input, but I kept pushing back on her, so she's not going to lay claim to co-authorship of it. But I was basically looking for something. It's hard to talk about something without some words to talk against. Not that in any way, shape, or form I would expect this to survive as is, that it's just a start for talking, and what goes in and what goes out, what definitions are we talking about, who are we talking about, but the basic process of big targets set by the council, specifics set by DEM, phase it in over time, start with things we know we can recycle because we are recycling them, high five, for example, or green waste. We know we have outlets for it. We do have collection going on, but maybe not to the degree that we possibly could. Start on commercial entities first, and then work down to residential bans only where it really is feasible for residents to get things reused or recycled. So that I think we're basically at that point of, do we even offer up this draft? Do we offer up the principles, and we can wordsmith the individual gray section principles or tenants as you wish, but that's where I felt we left the last discussion, and I would like some more comment from people. So anybody want to jump in?
This is Commissioner
McIntosh?
McIntosh. Yeah, I kind of like the idea of just do not attach the draft, and then what you can do is you can contact your council person, tell them that you're interested in helping them, and you have this draft you've already made, and you can offer them, because I know they do accept help in drafting bills that they write. So that's another alternative that you could consider, and then all your work isn't lost or wasted.
I'm retired. It's okay. Time spent's free. I did raise it with Cindy Evans, my District 9 council member, and her comment, and she didn't spend a lot of time going over all of the details of it, was this is a pretty big chomp that I've done, the big scheme and how you'd go about it. And she recommended maybe looking at a narrower application, and being from District 9, we're thinking, let's try it out with the resorts and the shopping centers that are associated with resorts here on the West Side, and get them to basically pilot this program and get them to see, can they divert from landfilling some of certainly the kinds of recyclables that we are able to recycle now as larger commercial entities. So that'd be another approach, or at least one that she offered as a little bit more doable, prove the case with a smaller subset of materials and entities, and still get a fair amount of return diversion occurring from the landfill. And I can guarantee you, as a resident of one of those resorts, recycling is not going on to the extent that it ought to. Other comments?
John here.
Is that
I believe
who's that? I'm going to go to commissioners first, Harvey, if I may. I'll come back to you. Anybody in Kona?
Hello? Are you,
Can't she hear us? Can you hear
hello,
us?
John?
Is that John?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can hear
John
you.
Olson?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Better?
Go ahead, John.
Okay. We can't take this thing apart. We have to approach, we gotta get a holistic approach to it. So it all comes together. We have different issues in different districts, which is gonna have to be dealt with. Particularly, I'll use Puna because I know it so well. We're having a population boom. The existing infrastructure is, I don't know anything kind I can say about it. It borders on, at this point, the useless. The transfer stations are located in such places as to make them either hard to get to or hazardous to get to, or inadequate for the population that is exploding on it. And you can't separate any one of those elements. They all go together. And on top of all of that, you pour the issue of where the money is going to come from. If we do not have a broader capability to charge at some point to collect what it's actually costing us to do the job. So all of these pieces have to come together, at least as far as Puna is concerned, or we're going to continue to have blatant illegal dumping wherever it can and will happen.
Could I ask clarification question, John?
Please.
So with what we have here drafted, is that a good start, or does it need to be even broader? I did have a section in there dealing somewhat with funding. Are you saying we need to do even more as just a baseline before we go to council, or is this good enough as is to go to council, or is it too much?
No, the council's business basically is show me the money. They are there to control the person. Right, so the first
Yeah.
question, the last question is going to be, where is the money going to come from to do this? Whatever it is, tie your shoes, where's the money gonna come from? And we have to have at least a start of an answer to that. Are you simply going to pile it onto the property tax? Are you going to try to get a fee at the register? How are we going to approach the money issue? Then we can talk about infrastructure because we know where the money's going to come from to do it.
Well, as I tried to draft this, at least for the initial run, by going to commercial entities, the hope would be we could encourage other commercial entities, private entities, to begin increased recycling pickup, sorting, and actual processing to recycle materials. Because it would make them some money. It would save the council or the county money by reducing the amount of waste going to the landfill and having to be hauled by county services to that landfill. Lee, you have a comment?
Yeah, with the way we worded, what we were working with for this, the whole idea is all we're doing is expanding the list we currently have. So technically it shouldn't cost the county any money. Is essentially what it comes down to. So it shouldn't make any difference in
It should be
operation.
a savings if we aren't relying on the county to provide additional services for pickup of recycling.
Okay,
think
yeah.
The biggest
Savings,
headache right
but-
now is there's no curbside recycling for residents. And we're going to have a speaker later, Nick Resnick from Hanoho Recycling, and he might be able to give us some additional background there. But yeah, the goal would be not to burden the county with a lot of new things to do and pay for.
We have a hand up here.
Was it Dell?
One of them.
I don't know how to make these pictures bigger, Dell. Go ahead.
Thank you. When we talk about keeping the recyclables out of the landfill, you know, I asked a few months ago about having recyclable containers at the parks. And now that sports, you know, is getting into baseball, you'll have football, you got soccer. There's no recyclable receptacles there. So all the recyclable bottles that could have gone and be separated are now thrown in the regular trash, which ends up in the landfill. So I was just wondering, has there been any move towards having those recyclable containers at the different parks or places where you have large events? Like the
Craig,
city?
are you on the call? I saw him in and out. Part of it is, the answer is the county, the parks, recreation, whatever, whatever that department is called would be responsible for it. Placing those containers and getting them hauled to the appropriate collection sites, whether it's Mr. K's or Atlas or Business Services. And that is one community that as one of our earlier comments had said, we need to have lots of communities involved in the discussion of how do we make this work? How do we close the loop? How do we get everybody participating in the process of collection and sorting and getting things into a recycled diversion? So I don't know if any of the infrastructure money is coming to Hawaii County to buy additional recycling bins.
I know
That's
there's
certainly a place to go to get the money.
well, I think, well, there's a county department that my son-in-law works at. And he said at their base yard, they have these recyclable bins. So it's not just the Parks and Rec, but maybe every county agency can, because we're all in it together. I mean, they can participate in putting up those recyclable things for the employees, or, you know, I'm just saying, we can keep that recyclables out of the landfill by having those receptacles where they should be.
Correct. And I did wherever I put, or at least I tried to remember, wherever I put large commercial entities as a starting point, large governmental entities would also need to participate and have programs like that to have receptacles and education and signs and start doing it.
Thank you.
With a hand up.
Dot?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I talked to my council person yesterday. Very nice man named Inalva. And we had a discussion on the draft ordinance. And as far as the letter, we're getting back to brass tacks here. The letter should be just an introduction to the council saying we are drafting this. We would like you to know that it's coming, that it's just a draft, and it needs work yet, but we will work on that. But the councilman was very interested in receiving this draft and saying, give us something to start with. We need to, you know, get started on this issue. And if we get hung up on a letter, which we, you know, should just be an introduction to this ordinance that we're going to work on, that we're never going to get there, essentially.
It feels that way. So are you saying that you would support the number one option? Take out the detail in the grayed out area, but also give them the first draft, or hold the
Yes.
draft back yet?
I would be in favor of giving the letter to them, say, this is what we're working on, and we'll get this to you as soon as we can.
Okay, so you're talking about option 2. No draft, just sweet and short, we're working on this concept.
Exactly, option 2.
Okay. Anybody else? Lee, back again.
Well, I mean, if the council wants to draft, then I say just go ahead and give it to them if they understand that it's just something to get them started and they know they're gonna have to hack and slash. Because we are not prepared or ready to try and draft this on our own. We could spend the next 2 years working on this.
Easily. John,
If we're gonna go that route, I believe we need to start with a commitment from the county council as to how much they are willing to put into it. Because this all comes down to infrastructure, and infrastructure. We do not have the infrastructure to deal with what we have, much less what's coming. So give me a dollar figure and we'll do the best we can with what we have. Or you're going to kick in some real money. We are going to relocate, at least in Puna. Almost every one of the transfer stations are all but useless due to their location. 2 of them are death traps. Well, actually,
I understand. I think we all understand your opinion of the transfer stations there in Puna. The question or the whole issue around this ordinance was to phase it in. Do not start with residents who would be the ones using the transfer stations. I did have the bullet, which was recommendation from the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan to allow small businesses, which are the only kind you really have in Puna, if I recall, to be able to use transfer stations for recyclable collection, not for trash. So again, it would be phasing it in as it is feasible. And if we are to wait until everything is built out perfectly, I'll be off the commission for sure. I'm not sure I know what dollar figure to give at this point. I don't think there is some magic county infrastructure that we know how to cost out that will answer all questions, which is why I was looking at an incremental effort and hoping to leverage more on the public private services that would build up if we were to provide them with a fairly steady stream of recyclable material. Are there other comments at this point? Are we ready to go for a vote on what to do with this letter?
we got a
Dot.
hand up.
Hi, yeah, I agree with John that first we have to work on transfer stations. They need to be safe to go to and accessible. But that's part of the ordinance. And though you mentioned residents would be phased in, you have them designated as one of the responsible parties in your statement here. Small businesses and residents who have access to county facilities, line 49, 50 and 51. So if you're looking at a phased in approach, maybe that sort of thing can be discussed and maybe changed in the real ordinance here.
Right. Again, as I said, I haven't thrown at you. I've done a draft of the DEM rules too. But I figured this was more than you could swallow as it is. That it would be the DEM on an annual basis would identify who and what would be banned from landfill. And so when they say the who is going to be residents and what materials is going to be down the road, not right away. And it may be residents not in Puna because KL is a mess. I don't know.
That was my problem with the statement of being residents close to a transfer station. Now, how close is close? That's kind of a nebulous term. And if you're saying that the EMC, no, we're the EMC, the department would have the say on who's included in the plan and who's not, then we should take it out of this proposal. Maybe we should state it as the department would have the designation of who is a recyclable waste generator.
Okay, I mean, what I meant when I put those in there is illustrative. Here are examples of different categories and not, these are the categories right at the get-go. So I could work on some adjusting of the language, or we wait until it gets to council and help them if we can do that kind of level of detail of changes.
Okay.
I said, this was not meant to be the codified ordinance. It's, you start with it and you get around the table and you line by line, beat the heck out of it. So, other comments? Because I'd like to go and finish talking around this thing. As I saw it, we had two options. Well, we've got three options. Ditch the whole thing. Option 0. Option 1 was give them the first draft and talk about how drafty it is. It needs a lot of work. It's just a starting point for you to start working through. And option 2 is do not attach the draft at all. Just say we think the council should look at the opportunity of prohibiting recyclables from going into landfill. And you figured out how we're going to do it and where the money's going to come from. So 3
do you
options.
want us to make a motion?
Make a
or
motion,
how
pick
you
a
gonna-
motion, 0, 1, or 2.
I just say go with the include the whole thing, if that's what the council wants. That would be my
Okay,
motion.
is there a second on that motion of include the whole thing? Option 1 would be what I was calling it. Is there a second?
I'd go with
Okay.
that with a little addition. I would go with that with a little addition. In
Of
other
what?
words, well, basically, we've got to find a way to get the council on board immediately.
Well, if you don't send them a letter, you're never gonna
Yeah,
start.
I get that, yeah.
So you gotta make the
Start
starting
somewhere.
point,
Yeah.
yes.
So, I mean, break this down into bullet points, the challenges that we have just seen. We have just discussed the challenges. These are the challenges that we see. And money is really only one of them. So we do need to get them on board, and I think the sooner the better.
Well, I guess the question is on board, how do we do that? Do we do it with a 1-line letter that says, please think about this, council? Or do we do it with a little bit more, which is option 1, here's a draft, you can do whatever you want to do with the draft, or
Start with that face-to-face with the council.
face to face with what in hand? Anything? What do I have in my hand?
What we just did.
I'm confused.
No, I have a question.
Dot-
Are we with this ordinance as it is? Because there was definitely things that we would like to change about it and that sort of thing. So I don't understand if we give the letter and the ordinance to them at the same time. That, you know, this needs to be changed in some ways. So
Maybe,
I-
maybe, Georgine, if it's okay, this is Sherry, I will just kind of summarize it in a legal way for everybody that hopefully makes this mud a little bit clearer, if I can.
Please.
So what the recommendation is and what Georgine is asking the commission to consider is starting, right? Starting by sending a letter from EMC to the council to let them know that this is something of great concern to the EMC and give an example, because you folks do not have the authority to issue ordinances, to give an example of the draft where we're at right now, with the understanding that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. But by doing so and going forward, you're sharing with your council members where the EMC is at right now as a complete draft that needs to be worked on immensely, but giving them something so that they can have a starting point to have this dialogue with you folks. And if you don't do that, then every month we're going to sit here and just keep talking in circles about this, but we need to start somewhere. And I think it's important because you folks have been on this for at least 4, if not 5 months, to send something to council to let them know that this is what you're working on and serious about. You're never going to get to a perfect ordinance because they're going to tear it up regardless. But having all the information that you folks have been talking about and put in there, and like what you said when you met Dot, when you met with Holeka, that he needs something to start with, right? And if you guys wait another month to do that, then that's another month that they're not starting with anything. So you folks, I think it's appropriate at this point to decide yes or no, you want to do it. You know, option 0. Are we doing this or not? If you're not, then we're done with this and we're moving on. But it seems like you folks all want to do something. So option 1 is draft a letter like you indicated your council member wants, right? This is what EMC is considering and finds to be of great value to the county, and we want to move forward. And this is a very rough draft of where we're starting. Yeah, this is just a starting point. Or option 2 is don't give them an example of what you folks have been discussing for the last 5 months and just give them the cover letter, so to speak, and say, hey, we want you to think about this. I will advise you folks that it's probably better to provide them a little bit more substance to show them what you are working on, because at the end of the day, they could all say, we don't care that this is what you guys are doing and we're not going to take it up anyway, which is what we hope will not happen. But that is very likely what could happen, right? They have the power to make that decision. But at this point, I think it's very incumbent on you guys to make a decision. Are you going to push to get the council really looking at this and then make that commitment to work with them to draft a more better ordinance? Or are we not going to do that anymore? And I think that's where a vote needs to happen, and we need to move forward with this. Like, are we going to start? Because if not, every month you're going to keep tweaking 1 line or 2 lines, and the council could scratch 80% of it, you know. And I don't want you guys to just keep talking about this, but nothing's actually moving forward in a direction to make the change that you folks also desperately want. So that's my spiel on this, and I think it's time.
Thank you very much, Sherry. I think it says it well, at least where I'm coming from. I would also offer, although I am no expert in the least on how the county council works, but what we need in drafting an ordinance is a multi-stakeholder group who's going to sit down with a whiteboard and a computer typing edit after edit after edit to generate an acceptable first draft of an ordinance from the council. And we as EMC are not going to draft that ordinance as a committee.
Correct.
So, disabuse yourself of that. We've got too many people who are going to be affected and who care and who should be part of an ordinance drafting group. For example, I don't really know how Heather Kimball went about her Oscar bill, but she had a group of people who were working on writing the actual language. And still the council was going back and forth, wordsmithing it. I don't see this commission, even if we were to form a PIG, permitted interaction group, actually coming up with the first reading of an ordinance. We aren't broad enough in terms of the expertise that needs to go into drafting the bill. And in fact, we need DEM to bite on as well. And they have not given input on this bill because they've got a few other things they're working on. So back to Sherry, or back to my options. 0, just drop it. Fine. I'm going to Europe for the next part of this crazy vacation I've got. We can drop it. I won't feel real bad about the language that I came up with. Or we can send it in with the draft. I had language in there already that says this is just a preliminary. It isn't approved verbatim by the EMC. It's just something to start the conversation on, or just a letter without any detail at all.
So we
So
have a,
Lee made the motion for number 1, the drafty draft and this letter. And we still need a second on Lee's motion, or we need a new motion.
I will second that.
Okay, John seconds Lee's motion. Any additional discussion?
Let's start some.
What are we voting on again?
We're
so
voting on whether we send the letter without the grade out part, but still send the draft with all the qualifiers against that draft, that it's Georgine's crazy shot at an ordinance. And it needs to be worked on by a multi-stakeholder group that is sponsored by the council and not by EMC.
Okay, so without the grade, but with the draft, the origin, by the top. Yes.
yes,
Okay,
letter with the draft.
okay. If we're ready to vote, Commissioner Ocasio,
Yes.
Commissioner McIntosh,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Otsuka,
Aye.
Commissioner Norris,
Aye.
Chair Adams,
Aye.
6 ayes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll do a minor amount of editing just to make sure it's clear, but what I hear the intent is, we'd like you to start working on it. We think it's a worthwhile effort to divert recyclables from the landfill. Here is a exceedingly drafty draft for you to begin work on it. And it's not like some of the crazy interviews that misquoted me and put up the title, the Hawaii has not banned recyclables from landfill. Done deal. No, we're at least a year out from even the first ban would be my guess, just at the pace things go. So I will write it up and Sherry can decide whether or not we can send it out, or do we need yet another meeting, which I'm not going to be at, to to get the final blessing on the words. But essentially, it's minus the strikeouts and the grayed out areas of the letter that is in the record.
I have a question, little comment. From the council, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, Inaba?
From my discussion with my council person, he mentioned that food waste is also something that we could do on this island and probably pretty immediately. So you might consider, I don't say demand it or anything, or maybe it'll come out in council, but maybe including food waste in with the green waste bullet.
Again, the approach I had in this is that it would be DEM's call on which items to prohibit, and based on whether or not the things are qualified. Right now, the pig farmers are taking the restaurant foods. We are not ready to take residential food waste across this island. There are a couple little spots where it can be done and is being done, but it's far from feasible at this point. But anyway, that's the kind of detail I think it needs to be worked through with the multi-stakeholder group.
Just thought you might want to include it or not.
It's possible, and it may be a portion of the community that it will work for, that we've got pickup facilities to get it. We've got a place to take it that can handle the volume that's going to be generated. There are lots of different factors that need to go into it. We may or may not hear anything about that from our guest speaker. But I wrote it down. Food's on the list at some point. It sure is recyclable. Can it be recycled on this island now at the volumes across the island?
You mentioned that Hawai'i's already got a program. I'm sorry.
They have
Hawaii's
yeah, you're kind of low for me, so I'm just want to make sure I'm catching it.
You mentioned that Hawai'i already has a food waste program that's working.
They have somewhat of a program. They do not have curbside pickup. They wanted to, but they don't, I believe. So how far people are in that process is something that will be a burden on DEM to put together. I was calling it a finding. I come from federal EPA world. So a finding that says, yeah, this is feasible. We can do this. And they would have to make the case, talking with the affected stakeholders. Can we make that happen? And by when?
Okay.
It should, theoretically, it should happen. Should have happened 30 years ago on this island. But I digress. All right, we're done with this item. I will put together a package. I'll let Sherry declare whether or not it's different enough that it has to go through the commission again for approval. But if it's just minor tweaks, maybe you'll let us get by. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Moving on, we are now to new business, I believe. Yes. And the new business is guest speaker Nick Resnick. Wave your arm, Nick. Yeah. Nick is the co-CEO of Hanaho Recycling that's located in Kona, Lula, somewhere. And he's been doing a lot of work. They do pick up recycling. And he's been doing a lot of investigation of how we can get some circular economy going on this island for resource recovery. And I'll let him go through all the detail. I mean, you can rattle off all the things that you're involved in, including being associated with Recycle Hawaii. But actually, Nick is one, I have to admit, I have bounced some ideas on this ordinance, but not wordsmithed it at all with Nick. As I would consider him one of the stakeholders that ought to be involved with the council in how do you make this real and happen. So Nick, if you would take it away, thank you.
Great, good morning, aloha kako. Can everyone hear me all right? I hope that's a yes.
We can hear you.
Great. So, I'm Nick Resnick, co-founder of Hawai'i Recycling. I wear a bunch of different hats, including being treasurer and board member of Recycle Hawaii. But my background is actually in high tech. I'm not an engineer. I'm a business development guy, one of the many unwashed MBAs. And I also have a background in real estate development here on the island. Hawai'i Recycling has been up and operating for 15 years. I think we're going on 16 years, 15 years on island. We serve mostly the west side. We started as a very small boutique service to an HOA, and then just basically expanded from there. We currently do residential curbside pickup. We have, it's always growing, but we have roughly 2,500 private homes and residential units that we serve. We do a lot of more commercial recycling now. We do zero waste planning and development with our commercial clients. We work with resorts, we work with hotels, and that's a big push right now. And we are also kind of the third leg is we're also returning our profits. We're a triple bottom line company, by the way. So slightly different in that we aren't a nonprofit, but you know, we are trying to focus on environment, social, and also have a sustainable profit at the end of the day. So that's just kind of a little bit about Hanaho, but we're also focused on investing in new equipment and infrastructure and doing R&D projects and partnering with nonprofits and private sector groups. So that's who we are. I should preface really quick is, you know, this is kind of an overview of a culmination of 15 years of work and then 18 months of due diligence that not only myself, but a whole group of folks, kind of a loose conglomerate of nonprofits and whatnot, local businesses, community organizers. So there's going to be a lot of material here. I'm happy to come back and talk further because I think each one of these slides, I have only about 10 of them, but I think each one of these slides go on for several hours. So I'm happy to answer questions after, and I'm happy to take written questions as well. And then as a quick preface to this talk story, I kind of envision this as a talk story because I hate presentations. But as a preface to the talk story here, my particular perspective is going to be the private sector. I know that there's a whole other side of it from you know, county, municipal waste and solid waste side, but I'm really focusing on maybe more the private sector and things that private sector can do. Additionally, I want to recognize that, you know, this whole conversation of resource recovery and recycling, while important, is under the shadow of our wastewater issues. And I understand that's a massive, massive problem, including cesspools. Some of that is somewhat related to some of the circular markets that we can talk about, but I do want to recognize that. And I also want to thank you all for the good work that you guys have been doing. And also big thank you to Ramsey and the Roth administration In my humble opinion, for the past 2 or 3 administrations has given the most serious thought and resources to this issue. Okay, so let's get the future started. Just as a kind of a genesis of this due diligence group, so COVID came and you know, everyone's operating as usual, as standard, and then big changes came. And in many ways, but from the resource recovery world, recycling world, we saw massive increases in certain kinds of solid waste, cardboard, OCC, and other recyclable materials. A lot of the reason is that our company in particular focuses in the resort HOA, second, third, fourth homes, as well as, you know, first homes. So when COVID hit, all these resort areas that were on a resort schedule and you know, ups and downs with the seasonality of the world, all of a sudden everyone moved in and made house and started, you know, ordering everything online. So I think we had something like 3,000% increase in our cardboard volume. And I imagine that the transit stations also saw similar increases in glass and cardboard and other items. But so this comes from a particular personal pain from an operations standpoint, as and then just kind of a culmination of a lot of other frustrations of other people within the due diligence group. So just quickly, some of the findings were very obvious, and everyone knows about those. And then some came out as being not so obvious, and I'm going to share those with you. And one of the main findings was, you know, we really do need to support a resource recovery economy, and that's really the only good answer. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve everything, but it's really our best chance at managing solid waste on the island. Real quick, also I want to make a note, when I talk to people about recycling, resource recovery, the first thing people think of is plastics. And, you know, plastics, we have a plastics problem. Yes, we do. We have a plastics problem. But I just want to say that a lot of this due diligence work was based on all the other materials that are much more in both volume and weight going to our landfill, and a much bigger problem. We can talk about that a little bit. But I also want to acknowledge that there is people very sensitive to plastics. Plastic recycling can contribute to microplastics, and I do agree to that. None of these kind of options that I'm going to talk through focus on plastics entirely. Plastics can be added. Just real quick, there's about 3 numbers of plastics that actually have a market value. The rest of it is toxic waste and cannot be recycled in a scalable way, in an economic fashion, and really can be recycled in a lab by the petrochemical company, not by industry. So a lot of people think that the best thing we can do for plastic is put it in the landfill right now and then solve the problem upstream. And I don't disagree entirely with that. There are some other options out there, but I just wanted to put that out there that resource recovery should be focused on a lot of the other issues that we have. Plastics makes up, and this, by the way, all my data is coming from the Hawaii County Zero Waste Plan and our consultants that did the last audit. There may be some slightly different data out there based on some of the other audits, but my understanding and where we're at, you know, about 11% of what goes in landfill is plastic. Most of that is single-use plastic, A lot of it is contaminated with food waste. You can't recycle it anyway. And or other contaminants, heavy metals and whatnot. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about is the other 84% of what can be recycled, recovered, and reused. Let's see. With that said, again, we had a loose group of friends, colleagues, nonprofits, businesses, to go out and kind of do a lot of this due diligence work. And in that process, we talked to many industry leaders, experts, stakeholders, both locally and internationally. And additionally, we talked with private equity and public funding sources. So there was a lot of energy and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this. In addition, there were a number of pilot projects that came from the due diligence work. Okay, so findings. So some of the findings, they're not all covered here. We can definitely talk through all these different details, but some of the ones that we found is that there's a really hidden burden on solid waste for Hawaii Island through our tourism, part-time residents, and real estate development industry. As working with this particular group, that's been our focus for the better part of 15 years. Everybody wants to recycle. Everyone wants to do their part. There are very well-intentioned people out there, but there are top-down issues and bottom-up challenges with logistics and operations. And then there's just also basic misinformation and knowledge that's not out there. We should really consider that, you know, in talking with some of these private equity folks that want to fund particular resource recovery infrastructure, they're constantly wanting to understand the population. What's the population? What's the population? What's the population? Well, the issue for us is that we have a population of roughly 200,000, but, you know, 1 million visitors just come to Volcano National Park. So at any one time, you know, we're outnumbered 5 to 1. And from experience, from doing this logistics and operations, I can tell you firsthand that the amount of consumption and waste created by people on holiday or in their vacation home or whatnot is much more your average standard residential. Yeah. So that coupled with COVID and online sales transition, it's creating a very, very heavy burden on Hawaii Island. And that's something that is missed by a lot of people. From also the findings, we had all these opportunities for circular markets. Okay, so when solid, I think I'm going to just be, everyone knows this already, but when solid waste goes to our landfill, that money goes to Wall Street investors in New York City. A little bit stays home for our truck drivers, for some of the local people that work at the landfill, but the vast amount of profit and revenue go to Wall Street. So what we want to try to do is switch that up. For every ton that we can recover through local business or local nonprofits or whatnot is a dollar or however many dollars that stays on the island. So we really have this kind of concept of resource recovery. You really have a choice. It boils down to two choices. One, you can send money to Wall Street, or we can keep money on island and create circular markets and create jobs and create more opportunities for young people to, instead of leaving the island, be able to stay. So those are all things that we should consider. 52% of the landfill volume is organics, and that's green waste and food waste and paper waste, paper fiber. 52%. Those things can be easily with some logistics and some infrastructure, can be easily diverted and recovered and can be recovered on island. Sure, there's some international markets and national markets that would buy OCC cardboard, but there's also a lot of things that we can do on island to recover that. Eliminating this is A, some low hanging fruit, B, for every ton of organic green waste or paper fiber that goes into the landfill, those materials create 1.5 tons of methane and greenhouse gases. So, you know, a lot of people consider, hey, it's not too bad to throw paper into a landfill because it's just going to break down. It's not toxic. Same thing with green waste and food waste. It's just going to break down. So it's all good. In actuality, there's some very heavy prices to pay for that. Secondly, that came kind of out of this concept of the 52% of what going into the landfill. And something that people in solid waste don't normally think about, I certainly wasn't until we started doing some of this due diligence, is that our farmers are in desperate need of soil. Maybe not so much in Puna and Hilo because you guys have great soil, but what nutrient microbial populations in the soil, the sugarcane industry that came in and you know, took nutrients and added petrochemicals. So like there are all these issues, and our farmers are in desperate need of soil. The other thing is you know, we're all champion local food production and buy local, and we certainly all should. But you have to also ask yourself, well, where are the farmers who are growing locally getting their implements? And they're shipping those in. And so if we are able to make soil amendments, mulch, and a variety of other products from some of these things that we're currently putting into the landfill, it lessens the demand for having to ship those materials in, lessens the demand for pesticides, lessens the demand for water because of water retention capabilities and the like. The other landfill materials, C and D waste is 22%, metals and a few other extras make up, and glass make up another 10%. So in the entirety, you're looking at about 84% of what goes into the landfill currently. That doesn't even include plastic. 84% really, we have a fairly good grasp of being able to do things with, either on island or through international markets. Some of the other things that we found is that no surprise, industry as far as recycling goes, buying recycled material, Wall Street investors, analysts, everybody essentially is pointing to a massive growth in recyclable material buying and value. And this goes all the way from your extended producer responsibility legislation that's going on. You've got corporate mandates by some of the Fortune 100 companies that are saying we're going to use a certain percentage of recyclable material in our products. There's this concept called paperification, which is a transition from using single waste plastics to single waste paper products that which can be composted at the end of its life or recycled through international markets. There's lots of argument about the life cycle assessments on that. A lot of the petrochemical plastics producers like to throw the life cycle assessments around, showing that plastics by far have a much better life cycle assessment than things like recycled paper fiber. Our understanding that you should all take that with a grain of salt because they are definitely loading it in a particular perspective. The other finding, the big one, is there's this tension between recovery, recycling, and our contract for the landfill. And that And I don't know all the details here, and there seems to be some confusion and some back and forth. And perhaps you folks have a much better idea as to what tonnage the landfill has to hit before penalties are then issued. I've heard different numbers, and so that's something that maybe you guys can share with me, and I have a better understanding coming out of this talk story. But this is back and forth of like, well, if we recycle and recover a lot of material, then we're going to be in breach of contract and we're going to get penalized, and so we can't do that. So we're in this back and forth. Well, how much can we recycle before we hit this issue? And one example is Bioenergy Hawai'i venture. I don't know if everyone's familiar with those guys. This is back to 2007. I have a little bit more on them later, but basically well-funded, well-researched, great team experience, track record, resumes, everything, and essentially was unsuccessful based on my understanding in dealing with the contract. They were talking about eliminating 70% of what went to the landfill. So maybe that was considered a threat. And I think that was, I'm pretty sure it was two or three administrations ago. So anyway, if you folks have some information in that, I would love to hear it. The other thing that came up was waste to energy, and this is a lot of learning on my part. I thought waste to energy was a lot further down the road as far as technology and viability than my understanding of it is. And I have a few slides. Also, our consultant that did the audit for the landfill and waste going to the landfill, they also did an analysis of current technologies for waste energy in 2021, and I can review some of that as well. Any questions so far? Anything that looks interesting?
Hi. Yeah, I've gone to various stores and that sort of thing in Kona, and I've noticed a lot of them are using the compostable plastics instead of regular plastic. And I understand from looking at the internet, which I don't know is really accurate, but a lot of those need to be industrially composted. Are you guys looking into doing that sort of processing as well?
You're absolutely correct that the compostable plastics, I think those are PLAs, and there's I think there's another chemical that's based on corn oil or whatnot. You're absolutely right. They need to be in an industrial composting facility. We do not have any of those in the state, I want to say. I think even our contract with Hawai'i Earth Recycling, they use thermophilic rows. They're not using an anaerobic digester or anything like that. So we have a very strong, very good compost partner who makes some of the best soil and mixes and compost on the island. They are unable to take that as a feedstock for their compost at this point in time.
So we have no way of composting that or reusing that material at all. So it's just academic that they're using. Well, other than, plastics break down into microplastics.
Yeah.
And, you don't want that in your system.
Correct.
But otherwise, we just have to take them to the landfill, right?
Yeah, they all end up in the landfill at this point in time, all the
Uh-huh.
ones that we have seen. And my understanding, and don't quote me on this, but my understanding is they do break down faster in the landfill and also may not contribute to microplastics in the way that another petrochemical based plastic would.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
This is
So-
Commissioner McIntosh. I had
Oh,
a
sorry.
question. I was a little, I couldn't see the correlation between the trash that goes into the landfill brings money to Wall Street investors. I didn't understand how you came to that conclusion.
Yeah, great question. So, our contract vendor, Waste Management, is a publicly traded company on Wall Street. Its profits and revenues, well, it's number one, moral and, drive is to maximize shareholder wealth. And that's, I would assume, I don't know anyone here who has shares in Waste Management. There might be some people that do, and in a variety of retirement funds, but long and short of it is, money could stay on island by reusing materials here, using local vendors to divert, recover, recycle, reuse, encourage eco-entrepreneurism and small business here to manage the materials versus the publicly traded waste management company.
Okay, I see.
Any other questions? Yeah. So waste to energy. So again, this is our consultants from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Them and a few other consultant groups that did our Hawaii County Zero Waste Plan 2019 update. Those are the same folks. And I've found them to be very professional, very thorough, and I've listed a link here where it goes into much more detail. So if you have any questions in regards to their findings, I would recommend going up there. But based on their research and their conversations, they do not believe that any waste to energy technology would be feasible for Hawaii Island. They also found some sufficient information about gasification and pyrolysis, because there is some back and forth as to whether that is combustion or incineration. Both the EU and the EPA consider both those technologies a second phase combustion technology.
I have a question.
Sure.
Have you heard of the company Yume?
Yes.
Okay. From what I understand, it is a zero waste. They take care of everything. There's no waste after they do it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit more about pyrolysis and biochar. There's just a couple points that this consultant group made about that. And so maybe that'll shed a little bit more light as to questions about that.
Okay, thank you.
It's on the next slide. Couple local examples of non-successful, I think we could put it that way, non-successful waste to energy ventures. So biomass using a pyrolysis technology. Everyone hear of Hu'anua? That is, they've been going for about 15, maybe longer actually. They're 400 million in. And as far as I know, the doors are still not open. And nobody within 100 miles wants it there is what I hear. So very politically toxic. And by the way, I might mention that this is a very homogeneous feedstock, which is what pyrolysis really excels at, is my understanding. Again, I'm not an expert. This is just my reading of it and from some of the findings and due diligence we did. But biomass might be some of the best feedstock to use in pyrolysis, because there isn't any fluctuation in material and heat and whatnot. And then the second example again is the Bioenergy Hawaii project. It was actually going to be a resource recovery plant for recycling. It was going to be an anaerobic digester for green waste, food waste, and the like. And it was also going to have a pyrolysis waste to energy component for those materials that didn't fit in the first two categories. They were expecting to have a 70% diversion rate, although 30% of what they were going to collect would be end up into the landfill. So those are just two local examples of some unsuccessful waste to energy projects. Locally, there's also at our consultants website here where they go over the analysis of waste to energy. They also have a long list of other failed US projects, very long list of US projects that didn't work out. This is going to be kind of an eye chart. These are just some of the comments that came through there. You're not really going to be able to see, but I'll read through just a few of them here. So these are all from people from the waste to energy industry that are proponents of it. They're proponents of gasification and pyrolysis. These are findings that they are omitting some of the limitations to the technology. And basically, here's some quotes: major project failures and the need for significant subsidization prevents these technologies from reaching commercial scale out of pilot. Advanced technologies like pyrolysis and gasification work best with homogeneous feedstocks that isn't municipal waste. Handling the inflow of heterogeneous material is critical and problematic. This other consulting group that does gasification, pyrolysis, and infrastructure investment say both gasification and pyrolysis are classified as high-risk investments due to previous failures at scale and no operating experience with large-scale operations in the US. Plants that continue to operate do so by abandoning mixed municipal waste and switching to a homogeneous feedstock. Another group that is focused on implementing this infrastructure, Geosyntec, is not aware of any commercial scale municipal waste gasification project currently in operation in the US. The other findings were these new LLCs that are popping up bring most of the pyrolysis proposals forward with no track record of technical or financial success. Pyrolysis is also used to produce biochar from carbon-rich materials like wood, wood waste, and agricultural waste. While promoted as a carbon sequestration strategy, biochar production results in toxic byproducts that are often ignored. Existing emissions data on pyrolysis plants shows that air emissions from them can be comparable to, or even more polluting than trash incinerators, which are dirtier than coal power plants. By most measures, proven to be the most expensive and polluting way to manage waste. A standard claim in favor of pyrolysis is that the process cannot form dioxins and furans because these substances are formed when organic matter and materials containing chloride are burned in the presence of oxygen at very high temperatures. In fact, dioxins and furans are formed at high temperatures within the range at which pyrolysis takes place. There are currently no pyrolysis plates operating continuously at commercial scale using municipal solid waste as a feedstock. And in 2014, our vendor, Waste Management Inc., sold off all its investments in gasification, pyrolysis, and other waste fuels companies. Those are just kind of a few short findings from our consultant. And I encourage all of you, if you're interested in waste energy, to go up and take a look at the rest of their findings. I do have one in particular waste energy company that I know of that I have engaged, and we talk back and forth. They actually do have a plant up and running. They're called Resynergy, and they are a plastics to fuel company. They are a real company. They actually have a plant in Santa Rosa, California. They take municipal waste from, I think it's, who's the vendor there? I forget. Recology, I think, is the vendor there. They're right next door to the Recology resource recovery plant. They take their plastics and convert that into jet fuel and diesel fuel, I believe. And they're actually doing it, albeit pilot scale, using pyrolysis.
So did your, excuse me, so did your, were there any findings in support of that rather than just opposed to it?
No
Nothing?
findings in support. It appears to, like, with their kind of wide view of the industry, is there's a consensus that there is no commercial scale pyrolysis plant up and running. There's been a number of failures. They list probably 20 so places, including Savannah, Georgia, and a few other places that attempted to. There's Baltimore that tried to get into waste to energy, chose not to once looking at all of the investment in. And the bottom line is, it's not a free market viable venture. It's not, it requires heavy federal subsidies, state subsidies, and taxpayer input to make it fly.
What if there was some company that didn't need all the federal subsidies or anything like that, and would personally finance it? With that?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. This is the findings that they came up with while doing a national review of the technology.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. There was one other local energy to waste project that you didn't mention. It was in Pahala. About, I don't know, 2008, somewhere around that time frame. They were going to burn, maybe not burn, I don't remember what process they were going to use, but they were going to take stuff like Christmas berry and plants and stuff and burn it for energy, and it didn't get past PUC.
Yeah,
Wasn't that the eucalyptus guys?
No, that's a separate something else.
few of those eucalyptus guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very difficult to find funding because of the massive capital requirements and the high risk nature of the technology and the fact that there's been so many, again, take a look at the review of the failures in different localities in the US. The other couple things that I didn't have here, but are in the analysis, the two biggest countries are Scandinavia. Well, that's a region, I guess, but Japan and Scandinavia are two of the largest waste to energy areas of the world that were in early and spent lots of money on it. Both are highly subsidized countries, highly taxed. And so those were not private sector ventures. Secondly, Japan is de-investing and cutting all from I think that they said from like 2004 to current. They're closing plants and they're not reopening them or investing in new plants. Same thing with the EU and Scandinavian countries. There's a disincentive to invest in those.
High latitude.
Yep. And they're all going to resource recovery. That's what they're moving to.
Yeah.
So those are the industry trends. And finally, so supporting this concept, the resource recovery economy. Okay, so I have this concept, poi and ha'i, are carrots and sticks, right? So how do you support a resource recovery economy? And this again is coming from private sector, private industry stepping up to make investments on their own to fill the need, solve problems. So in our conversations with many people, many organizations, including all those folks involved in recycling on this island and in the state. A big one that kept coming up is recovery credits. And there has been recovery credits in the past here in Hawaii Island. It's fallen away. I'm not sure why that happened, but everyone agrees that if you want to support resource recovery, at least, and you want to support the private sector to do the heavy lifting, you need to do some recovery credits. I'll give you a couple examples. So every ton that goes to the landfill, whether, in my understanding, whether private hauler or by the county truck, there is a fee that the county pays for each ton. If that ton does not go into the landfill, then the payment isn't made. There's that bucket of solid waste money could go to diversion and recovery. So if it doesn't go to landfill, that dollar number could be a recovery credit. Another example, from a personal standpoint, we do residential recycling. Okay, well, we do some rubbish hauling as well. Well, when we do rubbish hauling for residences, we can get a credit at the landfill and not pay a tipping fee. So I can set up a business. I could just go pick up rubbish. I can take it to the landfill, dump it, don't pay anything. I do the same thing with recyclables. I have to pay $100 a ton for metals. I pay $90 a ton for glass. I pay $100 a ton to recycle cardboard. Those are my costs that I incur, and it's a much greater cost burden, obviously, to recycle. Then I could just take it to the landfill and dump it. That would be the smartest thing to do as a business, not the smartest thing to do as a triple bottom line business. Also not the smartest business to get involved with. If I wanted just to make money, that's not why we got into Hana recycling. So something's got to change here, where if I'm diverting these materials and all the good people who work in all these different groups to divert materials from the landfill, there should be a credit of some sort given for that fact. And in doing so, you're going to support a whole chain and cascade of events. The other thing that we would support that came out of some of this due diligence was commercial resort tourism industry recycling ordinances, kind of what you guys are talking about right now. So we would be in support of that. All the folks in the recycling world and the recovery world, the reuse world, would also support that. At some point, there's a malaise or a misunderstanding, or just people don't care enough to want to recycle. And if there are ordinances in place, if you have a hotel that charges $2,500 a night, it seems like at the very least you could do is recycle your cardboard and glass that comes from drinking all the wine and liquor.
I mean, the problem is, of course, is that we still don't have the value.
Well, we could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Volume does matter, and volume matters about a lot of different things, but there are things that we can also do with low volume that we've been doing. We're not a big company, we're a very small company. We've been
Well, it isn't the technology to do it, it's the end use. In other words, you just, we don't have short days, we're too close to the equator, so I mean, solar works a disproportionately length of time than if you're somewhere on the mainland, for instance, or you're in a higher latitude. So, delivered free every morning, I mean, you're not gonna beat that way.
Yeah, well, we have a number of challenges, including living 2,500 miles away from the next speck of land. And the logistics and cost of shipping and all that also go into the challenges that we have, which is why we are big proponents of keeping as much material on island as possible, reusing as much as possible, recovering and using that as feedstock for local circular markets here and
Here.
avoiding that shipping charge and that international marketplace. Couple other just quick examples is, you know, I was at the landfill the other day. Two very large moving company box trucks were there. Very large company you guys would all recognize. Those both trucks were just full of cardboard and they were just dumping it into the landfill because was it maybe easier to do? I don't know. The other point is that this is another change in COVID, and I forgot I didn't go over it. There were a number of private haulers in rubbish that were doing some minimal amounts of recycling as far as cardboard and glass. As soon as COVID came, I don't know if it was a difficulty of keeping up, didn't have enough drivers, logistics issues or whatnot, but the choice was just made to like, you know what, let's go to the landfill. And a lot of people who do separate rubbish bins for cardboard thinking those are being recycled are actually not being recycled. And not to pick on any one company or anything, but that's just happening across the board here on our island.
Well, of course, when our visitor numbers went down,
Yeah.
so everybody just kind of step back.
But again, a lot of the material and the tonnage that we see is being driven by the real estate development industry, the tourism industry and the whatnot. So
That's
that
what
is something we really do need to work on. So both these particular points, the poi and pai, that's going to support private sector investment of pilot projects, R&D, testing, things that we're doing, things that I know other recycling companies want to do, things that people are looking into, but don't have that background, don't have that support. They're out there on a limb by themselves with no safety net. So when we start talking about credits, we're talking about some ordinances that at least backs the industry and supports the industry. And it also allows, in talking with private equity and debt equity finance groups, they find risk when you don't have volume and tonnage and access to that. So if there is volumes, if there is guarantees of tonnages based on both those or additional carrots and sticks, they're going to be more apt to make investment for local companies or give loans to do new projects and to be able to take on more recovery and recycling services. We did a whole ton of work on this concept of mini MRFs and small scale resource recovery facilities. That can be an entire week of talking with the information that we found. But essentially boiled down is at one point to have a resource recovery facility, you needed something like $40–50 million to build it. And you would have to have a guarantee from the municipality that you're going to have a certain tonnage to have any sort of funding potentiality. But there's been some revolution and some evolution in technology and in shrinking down the particular optics and robotics and things that go into this. And so what we did is we found two off-the-shelf mini and micro recovery facility builders in the US. That is Gorilla Recycle and Revolution Systems. And this is, tonnages of 5 to 10 tons per hour, I believe, and lower. And, starting somewhere in the 12 million down to the $250,000 capital investment for these types of facilities. In addition, we've spoken with very many system integrators that build these big resource recovery plants. There's probably 5 to 10 big major folks that do this nationally. And they've all agreed that they could build smaller and smaller models now based on the technology that's available at a much lower cost. With Gorilla Recycle, I don't know about the others, but Gorilla Recycle has an opportunity in West Virginia. They have the engineering plans to build these small plants, and that can be completely off the grid, be completely solar powered. And we are in a really great place for that to happen. Using regular power would be extremely expensive. Yeah. In our analysis, you know, while not at full due diligence, but a lot of these systems could be paid back in 5 years, is what they're promoting. Obviously, there's a lot of dependency on value of the commodities, whether we can keep more things on island than shipping off island. All those things enhance the viability of these systems. But those are very real. They're proven over nearly 100 years now. And I guess what I would do is, in the conversation of waste to energy versus resource recovery, they don't necessarily have to be opposed, but I'll do a really quick story about, during the space race and NASA, it was determined that astronauts really need to be able to write notes in space. So they're trying to figure out, how do we write notes in space with a pen? Because a pen uses gravity, and in zero gravity, our astronauts cannot write. So NASA hired consultants, they got their engineers, they spent millions of dollars to try to figure out how to get a pen to write in space. You know what the Russians did? They used a pencil. So the point here is that, yes, we could go for the big, heavy investment, high tech, new emerging technologies to help with solid waste and recovery. And I guess I would argue that there are a lot of low tech, high productivity options out there that we should also look at. And then this just to finalize here and kind of finish up. Some of our pilot projects were based on paper fiber recovery and diversion. And in particular, we use cardboard because cardboard is a very, very valuable feedstock to compost, to mulching products. We have livestock bedding being tested in a variety of different our chicken farmers and some of our horse and dairy.
Hey, Nick, I'm gonna have to hurry you along.
Okay, I'm
Go
finished.
fast. We can provide these slides to the commissioners.
That's it. That's all I have.
Oh, okay, ending with chickens. All right, good. Obviously, Nick knows a lot, and I think if you have some specific questions that you'd like to follow up, we can. Did you give your email on any of this presentation?
I can leave an email with Peter.
Okay, yeah, when Peter sends out the copy of the slides, if people have other questions individually, really appreciate the background here. But I think we're in need of a bio break, as well as Ramsey's going to disappear on us. So I want to make sure that he has time to go to talk. Are there any burning questions for Nick? No burnings. We had earlier a couple of people who had, or I guess Harvey Stone. Are you still on board? No, he's tired of listening to you, Nick. Any rate, if there were any comments that wanted to be made on the previous agenda items. If not, I think we need to take a bio break, come back. It's 5 o'clock here, guys, in 5 minutes, and then we will begin again with, well, first of all, I'm going to request that we push the item 6.2 on discussing source reduction items till after Ramsey gives his report, if we have time. And that's a topic that's going to be many months in discussion as well. Unless there are any objections to that, we'll plan on that. So run away. You now have 4 minutes to do your bathroom break and then come back. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. Thank you for being fast, everybody. Appreciate it. We're going to move right now to item 7, reports and correspondence. The correspondence item was in our reference folder for this meeting. I'm not sure if there's anything DEM wants to say about it, other than we've got an opportunity again to provide input. I would recommend, if you haven't also looked at the presentation that was made to council on the Puna Pahala, also had an awful lot of detail, but maybe a little bit more understandable for people to look at. Any comment on item A, the programmatic final environmental impact statement? Is there still comment being accepted? Ramsey, Kelly?
Go ahead, Kelly.
Hi, everyone. So the final PEIS was published on September 23rd, and the mayor, it's under his review, and we're expecting acceptance very soon. So all that to say, the PES is final, no further comments. We are continuing to take comments on the facility plan. And so keeping in mind that the PEIS is just the environmental impacts. And so comments on the facility planner continue to be taken. You can check that out on the website. We're also going to do one last public engagement event at the upcoming Revitalize Puna meeting, October 21st. And all those comments will be incorporated into the final draft, and we're looking to get that out in November.
Okay, great. I will just say, on behalf of the guides that we gave to DEM on what we think ought to be in an integrated wastewater management plan, they pretty much have hit all the items that we had identified as being critical, not in any bloody detail, but they're asking the right questions. They're looking at the right factors. And as a scoping document, I think it was very well done. I was impressed. Okay, moving on to director's informational report. Ramsey, legislative update.
Yes, aloha and thank you, Nick and Melinda, for your comment and participation. As you see the presentation from Nick, things are complicated, but we are hoping to get that golden egg from the last slide, because I think it is a complicated issue. And he outlined how complex this process can be and what type of technologies. I mean, think about it, you know, late 90s, early 2000, you know, when people start saying, what should we do with waste? I hear here on the island since 2007, 2004, there was also an interest. Technology have changed, but still the concept is the same. So eventually our current consultant is doing operational study of our current system. And as far as legislation is concerned, that's where I think somebody like Nick and Melinda and EMC commissioners, this is the time to propose any possible legislation that you want us to take the lead on. I know the administration office has put an email to us directors to submit any possible old or new bills that we feel that we need the mayor's support so to get it through the Senate. So I encourage each one of you and even Nick and Melinda to give us a proposal on things that could potentially improve our recycling program. I understand the challenge with plastic. You know, there's certain plastic that we could recycle. So why are we allowing non-recyclable plastic to continue being utilized for packaging and what have you? Maybe we need to you know, maybe that's a bill we need to take on is ban any non-recyclable plastic. So that would force the manufacturer to start using, you know, the recyclable plastic that already exists. You know, why not, right? So these are the type of things that from environmental point of view, we need to start. How could we?
Are you looking at county or state or both?
Both. You need to hit the state first because that could funnel, that would be a stronger message. But if there's something at a county level that other counties has done, we willing to mimic that as well. So we are, as always, going to entertain both. And we're going to do what makes sense to protect our environment from, you know, the microplastic and the non-recyclables and what have you, just for the sake of expanding the lifespan on the landfill. The landfill is very expensive to operate. Each cell that we construct, airspace is very expensive. So we need to be able to manage it in a manner that, number one, reduce, reuse, recycle is implemented, diversion, so we can minimize the amount of waste going to the landfill. So, you know, what I heard today is that's what's gonna continue allowing us to lead into that direction. It's a challenge, but we need all to work together to refine and define how that is gonna pan out. So, as like I said, item number one, legislative update. You all have the latest from Beater, but we getting into the new legislative session coming up. Once again, if you have ideas on any proposed bills, please shoot them to Beater so we could find a way or define the vehicle is going to take it to either the House or the Senate.
Is there optimism about the bills from last time about speeding up or helping the cesspool conversion program?
My understanding, that's gonna probably some of them is gonna go back. I had a brief discussion with Mike Gabbard in Oahu last week, and definitely there was some disappointment on the cesspool conversion bills that were presented, and it failed. some of it is gonna go back. And we'll see where it goes, but they may introduce new bills as well, so that's continuing.
Yeah, well, certainly from the PAHOA perspective, I mean, we have so many TMKs down there and they're all going to have to get some kind of hookup. The cesspool thing isn't going to work in the density that we're talking about.
John, you hit it right on, and you saw our presentation to county council and you've seen the report.
Yeah,
It is unfortunate we outpriced ourselves from a system because it's always more expensive to come remedy the fact after rather than do it prior. But it's just the cost of digging out roadways and kind of reconstruct people's front yard to be able to connect to their current homes, and it adds expense in it is, and it's the issue is not going to die away, even though the report is going to be finalized, but at least it's the start of discussion. Now we have a roadmap.
yeah.
We have our options. And how could we transition from where we at now to be able to remedy existing condition, but yet avoid falling into the same predicament as we move forward?
Laura, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Director. I'm just curious, do you have a timeline on when that operational study you mentioned is going to be completed? I'm sorry, I might have missed it.
No, I think sometime, I think Shali's or Kelly, correct me, is it October 2024 or spring?
October 2024.
Okay,
October, yeah. So it's a year from now.
okay, thank you.
So with that, I'll hand it out to our recycling sector section. Greg, you want to give
Good
update on?
news. Give us good news, Craig.
Yes, okay, so the good news is that we were recently awarded the EPA Swiffer grant, the solid waste infrastructure grant, and so it'll be used for reusable and refillable bottle system. So
So how much is it?
About 1.5 million.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, so it's and it'll be community driven. So the week of October 23rd is when they start to they'll have something planned that whole week for the community to come out and give input.
That's great. We'll definitely leverage that good PR.
And yeah, so we'll just leave it at the good news.
Okay,
That's $1.5 million good news. So it's a
not
great.
bad, not bad.
Not bad.
You only need what, 20 million to rebuild KL transfer station?
Well, that's infrastructure money, not recyclable and reuse. So it's two different baskets, I guess.
Well, and that
You
one
can
is
expand the reuse center for sure.
And I guess the other thing that we're gonna start doing is go back out and reach out to the hotels again and see what they're doing as far as recycling and assistance. So we met with one hotel earlier this week or last week.
I mean, the transfer stations, you know, in Puna, I'll keep saying this, you know, they're 3 of the 5 are death traps. Right? You're pulling out onto a 55-mile-an-hour highway from the transfer station. And with our population exploding the way it is right now, it's only going to get more and more ugly. We have to come up with another solution for those facilities. Whether it's additional road work where you get some kind of transition lane or something. Because just pulling out into the roar, and of course our population is just exploding. There's more traffic. I was just astounded by the number of people that were on the highway at 5:30 this morning when I left.
I mean,
We'll
bring in
come
a-
back to that, John. I think we've got the general plan at the tail here of this section. And you've got the meeting lead next month, so you can pile up whatever you want to in there.
With your permission.
My permission, I'm gone. I don't care. I can't even get into the meeting. So anything else on the solid waste side?
I think that's, we just gonna be patient enough to see what the study is gonna come back with, because it potentially is gonna lead to policies and procedure implementation. John, you bring in a good point, but maybe you guys, I don't know, as a commission, maybe send a letter to Department of Transportation. I've seen, because yesterday when I drove to the town hall meeting, it seems like they already doing traffic counts, because I was driving over these cables crossing the highway. So they are taking an average daily traffic count. I would imagine that's for the purpose of planning. That's what I used to use them back in the old days. So it seemed like DOT is already moving toward maybe some study to that highway, because like I said, they got the cable crossing the highway to get that daily average traffic counts.
Well,
But I don't know, maybe that's something for you guys to send a letter to DOT and, address your concern as well.
Well, they were already supposed to have blown that highway out to a full 4 lanes with a center divider. 15
Yeah.
years.
I'm gonna cut you off again, John.
Sorry,
We
go
need
ahead.
to get through this agenda before Ramsey has to go off for a noon meeting. And
So
I
if
think
you
it's
don't
something,
have-
do a little bit of follow-up and see what's you might want to recommend for next meeting.
So if there's no question about solid waste, we could, unless you guys have more questions, we could jump into the wastewater.
I wouldn't advise it. It's yishy.
I'm not gonna jump and dive, but we start the discussion. Let's put it that way. Pahala na lehu. I guess, Kelly, you want to go through the schedule of where we at on these wastewater projects?
Sure thing. So for Pahala and Nalehu, I think last we spoke, you knew that the Pahala PER was approved by EPA. We did discover a bit of an error in the AOC requiring, 2 kind of opposing deadlines happening at the same time. So there might be a revised AOC coming out on, this is an error on the EPA's behalf. But we're also trying to recommend not revising it, because we may have to, adjust it in the future. So we only want to touch it once. So more on that later. We have a public meeting coming up tomorrow for Pahala. We're going to be trying to solicit feedback on the environmental information document that is required. We are developing the project contract for the Nalehu environmental information document. And a meeting will proceed, we are now separating the community meeting. So when we meet on with Pahala, we're just talking about Pahala issues. And when we're meeting with Nalehu, we're just talking about the Nalehu project. But everything's on schedule. Everything's going well there. We'll get some good feedback tonight. Moving on to Puna. So as you know, we submitted the final PEIS to the State Environmental Review Program this month. And we're expecting acceptance by the mayor soon. We did a presentation to the mayor and county council to solicit their feedback into the final draft. So we're working still on the pre-final. We're going to do one more public education outreach initiative with the Revitalized Puna meeting happening in October 21st. For the facility plan is up on the website. So if you haven't seen the facility plan, go there for the details. For Pahoa, we are now treating Pahoa and Puna together. We presented Pahoa at the public council or the council meeting as well. We're going to be soliciting feedback again, Revitalize Puna, and then we're looking to finalize that feasibility study coming up in November. So we are wrapping up those two projects.
Again, I would comment to everybody, if just to try to page through. The website is great and it has bite-sized pieces, but it also shows that we've got very site-specific solutions that make sense, and others where everybody wants to, just build a big plant and suck it all in and treat it and we're done. No, that's not going to work. We're talking about really complex site-specific decisions that are going to have to be made to find the right solutions. Same kind of thing I think applies, although to a lesser degree, to the solid waste and recycle and picking up recyclables and whatnot, the different transfer stations. There isn't a single silver bullet, period. We're talking about a whole range of alternatives that we need to work through. We being DEM, you poor guys, need to work through where it makes sense. What's the right solution? And I think that facility plan and the presentation that you guys put together for council illustrates that really well, that I'm sorry, it's complicated. Life is complicated.
Yeah,
but congratulations on the work that's been done.
Thank you. Yeah, for Puna, we evaluated 20 different project alternatives from, all IWS to decentralized plants to centralized to high pressure or gravity sewers to low pressure to, just sewering urban areas, sewering all the residents, bringing all the sewer to Hilo. So they were all evaluated and again, evaluated based on costs, capital costs, operation costs, and environmental and technical factors. So.
Thank you.
Not on the agenda is the integrated wastewater management plan and our cesspool conversion plan that's just kicking off. We are trying to find countywide solutions to these issues. We'll be stitching together our regional plans in addition to updating our wastewater treatment plant facility plans. So we'll be walking away with, what needs to be fixed at all the plants. Where can we, upsize? How can we bring in more customers and more cesspools? So that effort's just getting kicked off. We're going to do 4 community outreach meetings on the draft and the pre-final on both the east and west sides with Zoom options for everybody in between. So stay tuned for more on that. That's all I have today.
Yeah, in addition, our staff has done so much with the staff we have. I just want to thank Kelly and the wastewater division and the solid waste division, lacking the staff level that we have. We talked about putting together these wastewater management integrated plan, I believe, the first day we started under this administration. If you all remember, but now it's coming to reality. 2.5 years later, we were able to secure the fund, we were able to kick the process forward. This is going to be a great tools for this administration in the future to be able to refer back to this roadmap, either solid waste or wastewater. So we definitely accomplished a lot by just securing the fund and getting this moving forward. As far as the wastewater project on the west side, we still, part of it is also to look at the facility planning and figure out the current infrastructure and how we could manage it and break down the O&M for future, and that should cover the hydraulics and possible expansions of the infrastructure itself as well. The R1 project, I think it's 60% was submitted to the Department of Health. So we're waiting on their comments. We're gonna continue pushing the design completion for the reuse on the west side pretty soon. So the Hilo waste treatment plan is on schedule. The project is anticipated to go out on the street sometime in the spring with the intention to issue a notice to proceed sometime in June. This project is going to be a combination of the prior phase and the current phase that is going to be covering the secondary treatment options of the facility itself. So that's moving forward. I think Kelly has addressed the ACOM and the Puna district studies and what have you. So Hawai'i and South Kahala, Kelly, did you address that as well?
I did not, thank you. So we're completing all milestones on schedule. The project website is up as well as the form for public input. We anticipate the draft to be completed in November, and we will start public engagement around that time when the draft is complete. And the final, we are anticipating to be completed, let's see, end of June 2024.
Thank you. Yeah, so with this project, actually, we had a great meetings with the community, and I think we're gonna see the light through the tunnel. It's getting closer to reaching a solution. And I think American Water, if they end up accepting connection, the county's looking at creating a county sewer district with the people, hopefully, and trying to figure out how the sewer collection is going to be funded and constructed to serve that community going to that Manalani wastewater treatment plant. So there is, like I said, it's a great steps moving forward, and I think hopefully if that gets finalized, at least that was one of the biggest challenge, and we could use this model to reflect in cesspool conversion in different areas within the island. So if that works, then we could implement it somewhere else if private wastewater system is available and nearby other communities.
I had also heard some comment, and I'm not sure if I'm remembering it exactly, but that there are some residents who are eager and willing to try some maybe innovative technology for individual treatment systems. And just wondering how they go about getting permission or smoothing things to allow people to try new things without waiting. They're anxious. They want to get things done and changed and improved sooner rather than later. And I think there is concern about this whole planning process takes forever. And how can we just do something?
Well, doing
I have-
something.
I have a comment on that. Sorry, I'm looking for the raise my hand icon, but the Department of Health is just starting this conversation about state cesspool conversions and how we're going to work with residents on it. And definitely at the front of my recommendations is going to be for the Department of Health to spell out what is, because the law says it has to be septic system or ATU or else approved by the director. And so we need more guidance for residents, you know, the processes and what is approved. So that'll be something I'll be working on with DOH.
Well, it's good to hear. I mean, it isn't always going to be, the answer is DEM sewers. And how do you not take on, it's not your burden to get it up faster necessarily. It's to, how do we grease the skid so people can try to get something better if they're willing to take the chance, if they're willing to spend the money now to put in systems that work for them. So I'm glad to hear that, Cal. I think it's good for us.
Yeah,
That
just
sounds like,
in addition to that, you know, I understand there is a lot of people coming in with, you know, new technologies, trying to implement what have you. We cannot use it unless it's being proven. So the idea is, you know, hey, I got a new technology, give me a green light to do it. It has to go through a pilot program. It has to be proven technology that's been tested. Department of Health had two of them, NS40, I believe, and NS45, that it's already been approved technologies. They have a list of certain models of septic tanks and ATUs that it's already been approved. Anybody could, all they need to do, get a hold of DOH and get a list of what's been approved, and they don't have to wait. They could just go ahead and buy it and install it. So there is no reason to reinvent the wheel unless that technology could have created a better quality for effluent, but we need to work with DOH to do a pilot program and get it approved through the system.
no, I think it's more like Kelly was saying, you need to encourage DOH to communicate more, get more information out there on what the alternatives are, and may be willing to try some pilots and see if they can provide the proof. Another question for you, talking about community conversation. Have you hired this professional public information officer, whatever you called the position?
We still in the recruitment process. We have not hired. So if you guys know if any people, send them toward our office or just put the word out as well.
Okay, had to ask, sorry. The last item under you guys was the general plan. and I have to admit, I haven't been able to wade through it yet myself. What, do you have a list of the comments that you've given them? Or is that still in process? On the general plan?
So Peter compiled all of the department's comments and submitted them to the planning department prior to this public engagement portion that they're going into starting this weekend. So they're having a Kona side meeting on Saturday, which Ramsey and I will be attending, and another one coming up on the Hilo side, maybe October 7th. So we'll continue to take additional comments.
Okay, I mean, I would encourage those of you there, again, I'm out of pocket here, to go and attend those meetings. At least focused on the solid and water waste infrastructure issues that are DEM concerns.
We have a hand up.
You do? Oh,
Yeah.
Del, sorry.
I just had a question because I know Ramsey said that we'd be getting the consultants will be contacting us for our input. I haven't been contacted yet. And is there a timeline that we should get this in for them, since all this planning is going in?
This is for the solid waste operational study.
Right.
Is that the one?
It's not the general plan.
So what about, so when are they gonna notify us then on our comments?
They will here. I'll have Shalise. I saw her. She's one of our project coordinator for the solid waste. Shalise, here she is. She's leading the project and she's working with our consultant. And yes, Dale, the intent is to get you guys because you guys are a stakeholder. So Shalise, do you have a timeline when that's gonna happen?
Yes, I do. I'll actually share my screen so that you have it. Just 1 second. And nice to meet everyone, by the way. So for the sake of time, we just kind of already have an idea of what the purpose of the solid waste, excuse me, operational analysis is. And to answer the questions from Lori and the commissioners about the timeline, we have started the project. We've completed phase 1 of the data gathering, which included some of the interviews within our solid waste team. On phase 2, another round of interviews will be held. So you will be contacted between, I would just say, September 2027, and that date is wrong. What's the other date? October. So our second round of interviews will be in October, between October 12th and October 20th. I'll update this slide so it has the correct dates. So that will be coming. It's under next steps under phase 2. And then we'll also be presenting an update to County Council on October 17th. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shalise. Georgiana, I'm gonna head out to my other meeting because it's probably gonna take a few minutes.
I think we're back to the new business item 6.2. Unless anybody has any dying questions for Ramsey while he's running out the door. Seeing none? Thank you, Ramsey. Good luck at your meeting, whatever it is.
So much. My staff could continue. Thank you so much.
Run for it.
So were there any other questions for DEM? Oh, I had one more. I need to turn the page. Dell was wanting to track up on what R&D got from their request for information. And I think we got a copy of it. It was kind of pithy. I'm not sure. There were a lot of things with ... it didn't show up, at least on the screen I could see. So I don't know if you got all the answers you wanted off of that
I'll look at it.
summary that they did. It was in our references folder.
Thank you. I do have a, I was made aware that there's a consultants that were working on the environmental assessment project. And
For
they're looking,
For which?
it's environmental assessment, early consultation for Hilo wastewater treatment plant improvements. So,
Okay.
so all that, it just said that they're looking for comments to be given before October 20th, I think. So I was
Is that
just
on the
wondering,
schedule, Cal,
there was some-
for Hilo?
So sorry, Hilo is not, I'm not as up to date on Hilo. It's not my project. But it sounds like there's a public comment period for the environmental assessment. So October 9th is the deadline you're saying?
October 22nd.
22nd. Okay. Yes. So any comments? I mean, you can certainly go to the the state environmental review program website where it is posted to make comments directly there. And you're also more than welcome to send them directly to me, and I'll make sure they get to the consultant and the project manager.
But I was wondering, no mention was made of this to us. As far as the assessment, the environmental assessment, early consultation.
What do you mean?
Well, it was given to the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. And so they're looking at giving the plan, the project and everything. So without saying all of it, that's what I got. So that's why I'm asking why we weren't made aware. And if as commissioners for the,
You don't, so the department, or when we have projects that are required to go through the environmental assessment process, that's not something that EMC specifically is going to be consulted on. You can provide public comment, but basically it's the state program, right? And they're conducting the EA. And so when they put out the environmental notice, this is what is being done, and you can provide public comment on it. That's what's happening. I'm not
Maybe
sure-
Peter could find the citation in the environment report and she could read the
Right,
EA
because they're required to do that.
document.
They're required to get put out for public comment.
I guess they're saying they're acting on behalf of the County of Hawaii Department of Environmental Management.
The consultant that's doing the EA,
Right.
correct?
So I guess I misunderstood that to mean that the environmental department is aware of it. And so maybe it was something we should be aware of? No?
I think what would help this situation is if we add the EMC email to our distribution list. And so you're being notified along with, other state and county agencies of what's going on. That's
Regarding the environment. Thank you. I think so.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Laura, you had a comment?
Sorry, it was about the previous RFI 444, and that I couldn't open the attachment. So I'm wondering if that could be sent separately.
Could you send it again? Was that the one that forgot the
It was
S on the HTTP? So you couldn't just copy and paste that link.
Right. There was a few actually that were not directly opening, but that was
Yeah.
one of them. Can send that separate would be great.
Can you
They're
do
all
that, Peter?
posted on the county website. I had no problems downloading them and opening them.
I tried that too. And when I opened it to pick it, it just never opened up. So I don't, maybe it's my connection. Sorry.
I'll send to everybody.
Thank you, Peter.
I always think it's my computer. That's why I don't.
Okay, I gotta add 6 hours. It's 11:45, right? the item that we skipped was item 6.2. And that was to begin the discussion on what EMC initiatives we might want to take focused on source reduction towards zero waste and next steps. The ordinance stuff that we approved doing was around keeping recyclables out of after they've been used and are ready being tossed. Hopefully they'll be tossed into a recycle bin instead of tossed into the trash can. But best place, the top of the pyramid, is to don't generate the waste in the first place. Don't buy it. Use only as much as you absolutely have to use, etc., to cut down on the generation of waste in the first place. So there are innumerable things that EMC could also do. And I know it's near and dear to Laura Cassio's heart. If you want to just start people thinking, I don't know that we are going to have time to get into it in any depth, but maybe give a flavor and get the brain cells cooking, guys, on what makes sense for EMC. And John, if you'd be willing to agendize that for next meeting.
Certainly.
Okay, Laura, you want to just do a summary of your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm happy to, for the most part, table the discussion for deeper along the lines that we're running late. But I think a lot of things were raised up actually already in the discussion, in the presentation from Nick Riznick, and also there was some comments in the chat, I think, that may have been referring more to EPR legislation or ordinance for that matter, more on the state level, I believe. So mandates around packaging and especially EPR that would be focused on reuse and refill, such as the good work that the Swiffer grant is going to be implementing. So I just wanted to start the discussion, kind of see what the litmus is for others on our commission, whether they're interested in exploring more ideas around reuse and refill infrastructure, repair cafes, tool libraries, expanding county reuse. I think maybe Chair, you had mentioned that as well earlier. I know, a needs assessment, and I don't know if that's going to be part of the count of Director mentioned about the operational study and how much of that will kind of direct more of the needs or give us information for a needs assessment of sorts, because I'm not quite sure exactly what's in that study. But at any rate, we'll kind of have to look at that a little bit more. Artisan scale or small scale food waste, whether it's pig slop or composting, distributed, more decentralized, in multiple areas as to not create one large scale industry in a central location. Also the same thing with looking at programs to further expand more small scale distributed green waste as well, and what that looks like. But I think one of the big things that was mentioned was the EPR legislation and seeing how we can perhaps work with the council or the department and our state legislatures, especially our Hawaii Island delegation, in supporting bills that are currently actually still on the desk because it's a biennial and technically are still alive until the end of next session. So then that's it. So I just kind of wanted to see if anyone else, I know Melissa's not here, Melissa Cardwell, but looking into just the energy potentially behind that.
One of the options, for example, could be if there is a particular focus area that you have, we could authorize a PIG, a permitted interaction group of 3 or more commissioners to go offline, talk to each other even, without having to be in a public meeting and publish minutes of your meetings. If you'd be interested in that, don't know if you're ready to commit at the moment. What you described, I think, Laura, is a pretty broad scope, and not everybody may be interested in every aspect. But I would recommend that you think about what you might be willing to put some time in on for the next meeting. And if something grabs you later, you can always join a PIG or ask to form a new one. But if there are any comments right now of inspiration or interest that you'd like to voice?
Well, before I forget, I know in July, I think Ramsey asked for our input and any suggestions we could have to help the department on some of the weaknesses. I think,
Wait, this is just on Laura's thing.
oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
They're
Yeah,
stunned, they're tired. It's almost lunchtime. I understand that.
Yeah, perhaps think about it in the future as far as interest in more upstream solutions. And I know that Director Ramsey had also mentioned last meeting that there would be potentially, there's a few council members working on an ordinance to ban single-use plastics in our county. And so just that is also an upstream solution, possibly, but I know that that's not in the process for our meeting at the moment, but just looking at possible upstream solutions that if anyone has upstream solutions that you would like to work on, I am very much interested.
Okay. Lee.
Didn't the state legislature pass some kind of EPR bill? Wouldn't that?
They heard it, but it didn't pass. There were a few that have gone through different committees, and I believe it was 2021. Although I'm mixing up my years, maybe there was one that went to conference committee and then did not pass through conference committee. So there are two current submitted pieces of legislation on EPR that are different in some ways. Some fundamental ways, and both of them are in the legislature currently from last year.
Sherry, are you still there? Your name is.
Yes, I'm still here.
Would it be allowed for people if they have ideas for whether it's an interest group or something for EMC, to send ideas to Laura, and then she could run through them as examples at the next meeting? As long as they aren't having multiple people conversation, it's just Laura compiling a list.
Yep, that's fine.
Are you amenable to that, Laura?
No, absolutely. That's great. So long as it's permitted, I'm happy about that. Just to start this discussion of other options besides banning it at the end of use, but more upstream.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think like everything that we deal with, we're talking about the entire ecosystem of the planet. There are multiple solutions at multiple points that we need to be looking at. And a lot of it depends on what kind of energy are you, the commissioners, willing to bring to the effort. So think about it, read up. There's plenty out there to focus on. Anything else?
Dell had a comment.
Well, yeah, I think in July, Ramsey had just asked for the commissioners to give some input. And like within 90 days, and I think we're running out of time.
Oh, that was for the state, well, what are they? I forget what the initials are. Anyway, it's each county puts together ideas for the state to do legislation. I think that's what that was about. But Ramsey will take suggestions on anything and everything that's under his wing. So you got a great idea, throw it at him.
And if it's operations and policy related, certainly when we do the solid waste operational study interviews, we would like that feedback as well.
Yeah, I'm sure there are going to be lots and lots of interesting questions. The scope of that study is amazing. So if you've got ideas, share them. Okay, anything else live that I forgot, Peter? I think we're up to item 8, future agenda items. Again, if you've got things for Laura to compile a list, if there are agenda items that you want covered at next meeting, send them to John Olson, who will be chairing that meeting, and copy Peter Sir, and they'll be putting together the agenda for next time. If there are huge holes that I swam over, feel free to go back and cover them. If there's follow-up that you think the commission might benefit from, you can see if Nick's got time to come back or at a later meeting. Anyway, think of what you might want to cover at the October meeting, which is going to be in Hilo on October 24th. That's a Tuesday. So hopefully we will be able to pick up John Burns. And also by then we should have our District 7 commissioner on board. So that'll be fun too. Any other announcements? I guess one brief announcement just to go on the record for that. You may have heard that the DEM has been sued about the Kalakaua wastewater treatment plant. Since they've been sued, zip, the DEM is not able to talk about it. And Sherry, if you wanted to add any comment on that.
You got it spot on. Zip is the word. We're not
So-
going to make any statements.
So don't put that on the agenda, John. It's not going to be talked about.
Nothing to
Unless some
discuss.
settlement occurs, and then it'll be in the director's report. Anything else?
Just quick question. Who is
Yes, Doc.
suing?
Excuse me?
Earth Justice filed a lawsuit with on behalf of, I can't open, part of my computer is not working, but the Hawai'i from Honokohau.
I see.
Yeah. Okay, so that was what they chose to do, and this is where we're at.
So if anybody would like to motion for adjournment, I'd be willing to accept.
So move.
Second.
We got a second. Do we have all hands and voices raised? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aloha, everybody.
Enjoy your vacation, the rest of it.
Thank you. Thank you. And may my drain pipes be fixed in my condo, which is why I'm having to traipse all over the world now.